Perfect. Guys, it's an honor to have you on this day of our workshop, right? It's another day again, where we come to give out to you, the best of the best workshops, the best projects you can do, the best projects you can implement, the best projects you can learn from and get yourself, ready for the job market or whatever, you're pursuing in your career. And so, today we're going to look at a project that has to do with database. But first, my name is Eric Nyedze. I'm a cloud and DevOps engineer, 5 years experience in the cloud, and also as a CIO of Solavis Technologies Institute. And we are here to help you, like I said earlier on, to upskill your, your career, be it in cloud, be it in data science and machine learning, be it in cybersecurity, be it in digital marketing, right? So these are the key areas that we are committed to help you try. We are committed to help you build your career in any of these areas, right? That is our commitment for you. And so today is one of those days that we've come again together to do a workshop this time around on cloud computing and DevOps, right? So today our session is going to be on a homogeneous database migration on AWS. I'm just here as the host to help, guide and, to check, make sure that the system is working very well. And also, the session is going to be led by engineer Asaph. Asaph is a tutor with Solavis Technologies Institute. He's also our chief research officer and also an AWS Innovate ambassador, right? He has a lot of caps in his head, a lot of titles in his head. So guys, let's welcome Asaph to help lead us in this session. And so I'll plead that wherever you are, make sure your internet is good. Make sure no one is disturbing you because you will need full concentration, right? You need maximum concentration to get the best out of this project. And like I said earlier on, the link is in the chat. If you have someone who is not yet in the call, send them the link to join the session. They can't afford to waste to miss the starting of this session. So without much ado, I want to let Engineer Asaph, take on this session. We are happy to have you, sir. And please have the mic.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eric. Thank you so much for the warm introduction. Right. Um, and thank you guys for joining for this wonderful session. I hope it will be really amazing and you guys are going to learn a lot, right? Please, what I would love each and everyone to do is that please you can drop your name in the chat and where are you joining from, right? So before I start with my class, I always have some few rules that I usually pass, right? So please don't unmute yourself unless I've asked you to unmute, or if you have any question, please you drop it in the chat, right? Because you may unmute and you may make some noise which will distract me, and then I may lose the track, right? And yeah, that is just the only rule that I have for now. And if you have any question, please drop in the chat, right? And don't unmute, right?
Yeah. And
So
and and just before we kickstart, it's good that we know where we are all joining from, right? Because you might be in the same area with someone and you don't know. You guys might want to connect after this session, right? Or you don't know who might get you a job opportunity after this session. You could be in Cameroon and you realize that there's someone here in Germany who might connect you to a job opportunity or who might connect you to a partnership or for a collaboration, right? I want us to just drop where we're joining from. Just drop. I know that some people had dropped earlier on, but just drop again so that we know where we are all joining from. Me, I'm right here in Ghana, specifically in Accra. And yeah, that's it about me. I see Ben. Ben is joining right from Germany. Oh, Ben, is a pleasure to have you. Sylvie is joining from Yaoundé. We have Michael. Oh, Michael is in Ghana. It's a pleasure to have you here, bro. Ndichia.
Um, Eric, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me, please? I hope I've not frozen. Okay, I thought it was my internet. Yeah, sorry guys, I thought it was my internet. Probably his network went down. Asaph Danchi. I am joining from Yaoundé, Cameroon, and yeah. So in our today's session, we are going to talk about migration. So basically, we're going to talk about homogeneous migration. There are different type of migration. We have two type of database migration, which is homogeneous database migration and heterogeneous database migration. So heterogeneous database migration is when you're migrating from one database type to a different database type, right? So while what we're going to do today is a migration of database from the same database type. Right. And we also do have application migration, right? So please, any question that you have during our session, uh, please let it be center on the project that we are currently doing, right? And later on, after the session, if you have an extra question, after we have got the recording, you can ask any other question that you have, right? So please, I think we are good to start. So, what is homogeneous database migration? All right. Homogeneous database migration is basically migration from the same database type. That means what? We are migrating from uh, uh, MySQL database to another MySQL database. Right. So let's take an example. A company um, let's say Netflix that is on-prem, sitting on-prem, and they're currently using a server which MySQL installed on it, and then they're using it to store their data, right? They're using it to store your data. You now, as a tech engineer, you now as a cloud consultant, you now as a migration expert, you step in because they have requested your service to help them migrate from on-prem environment to the cloud. And they say, and during the assessment phase, uh, you have concluded that you're not going to change uh, the the database type, right? You are going to use the same database type when moving to the cloud. So what approach are you going to use for that particular project, right? So basically, it's the same approach that we are going to do today, which is homogeneous database migration that we are going to do today. And then let me take another example that is very more, I'll say, um, just like drop of water, which we're going to do today, right? It will just be like two drop of water we are just going to do today. So let's say you're in a company and then due to some license policy, okay, let me take an example of TikTok, right? So you can imagine a few years ago, I think two, if it's not 2 years, but before Trump came in, TikTok was having some issue with they wanted TikTok to be US based, right? Before that, TikTok was based in Singapore. It was not based in Texas. There was not a TikTok based a data center in Texas, right? But because of the policy of the US the US, right? They have to move the US data to the US, right? So since they don't want to change the data, it's just to change the location of data, right? They are going to keep the database type, definitely, right? So what they're going to do, they're going to do what? A region to region migration, which is the same thing that we are going to do today. So in our today's session, we are going to do a region to region migration. Right. So let's have in mind we have on-prem to cloud, we have cloud to on-prem, right? We have cloud to cloud, and we have region to region migration, right? So in our today's session, we're going to do region to region migration. And um, without talking much, without saying much, I think we are good to go. We can start with our session of today. Please, let's all log in into our AWS account and yeah, into our Amazon account. So I'll give like 1 or 2 minutes for us to join to log into our AWS account. Please, if you're going to follow up, right, please make sure you follow my instruction and you do what I'm like when I tell you guys to do something, do it exactly as I say, right? To avoid some troubleshootings, right? And also to make the session to be smooth, right? So please let's all log into our AWS account. Let's all log into our AWS account. So please, if you're done logging into your AWS account, drop a yes in the chat, please. Okay, I have Fidel that says yes. Please, if you're done logging, drop a yes in the chat so we can. I want to carry everyone along and make sure that I don't go forward and back with the session. I really, is it, I believe Fidel, okay. Are we only two in class that are following up with the session? I mean, doing the demo, please. Okay. All right. Please, when you're logging to your AWS account, so the first thing is that, hey, oh, we need a server, right, that we are going to migrate the data from, right? So we need a server which we are going to migrate the data from, right? So I've not, I could have created this, I could have created a server before the session, but I wanted us to do it like to carry everyone along, right? So what we are going to do is that we are going to create our source database, right? The database that we are going to put some content inside, right? We're going to create a source database and we're going to put some content, and we are then now going to carry on start the migration after we have put the content, right, to our target database, which will be sitting in another AWS region, right? So let's search for RDS, right? So you can type RDS, which is relational database, right? So you search for RDS. When you're done searching RDS, please you click on Aurora and RDS. Mhm. So please, when you search for RDS, right? So what is the first thing that we have to do? The first thing that we have to do, unlike servers, right? You have to define in which environment, in which part of your VPC, right? So before the session, I already have some VPC that I created, right? So so I hope you all have some VPC that are available that you can make use of. So um, unlike servers, right? Unlike EC2 instance, database too, you have to define in which environment you want them to be created, right? So let's go click on subnet group, right? Which we are going to use this to specify in which subnet, right, we want our database to be created, right? So we are going to define, we're going to choose the subnet in which we want our database to be created, right? So please click on subnet group. When you're done clicking on subnet group, please click on create DB subnet group, please. When you click on create a DB subnet group, let's put the name as let me put Saturday workshop, or let me say no, homogeneous, homogeneous DB migration. Right. So let me put my name, homogeneous database migration. And then for the VPC, I'm going to select my project VPC. So yes, you can create with the default VPC because we are going to see. So this is a scenario, right? So since we want our database to communicate outside of its VPC, like to communicate outside of its environment, because the setup that we are going to do today is a setup that you can also use for an on-prem environment, right? But with some little change that you can adjust regarding that, right? So yes, you can use a default VPC because we are going to select um, public subnet, right? So I believe uh, your default VPC have public subnet. So when you select your default, if you have your default VPC, you can select your default VPC. But if you have any other VPC that you're able to identify your public subnet, then please select that, right? So when you select it, please select all the availability zones so that you're able to see. Um, Stanley, the region. So if you're in North Virginia, you're going to do the migration to Oregon, right? So, but I'll recommend you to start to do it from Oregon to North Virginia because sometimes North Virginia has some problems. uh, you all know it's a playground. Like we all love North Virginia, but Oregon is more stable when it comes to, yeah. So you can use Oregon as I'm using right now, right? And then we are going to migrate to North Virginia. Yes. So please do select Oregon uh, for your source database. So we are creating our source database in Oregon region, right? And then we are going to migrate our data from Oregon to now um, North Virginia. Please make sure you select your public VPC, uh, your public subnet, please. If you can see right now, I have two subnet, public one and public two, right? So please, and if you're using the default VPC, definitely all of them will be public, right? So you can just select all the subnet that you have available there. So please make sure you're in an Oregon region, right? Let's all be in the Oregon region because there are certain regions that migration is not stable, right? I would recommend you to be in Oregon region. You start your migration from there, and then we are going to migrate to North Virginia. So, and let's put our name, homogeneous database migration. The description, you can put the same, right? You select a VPC that you have. If it is a default VPC, you select your default VPC, right? And when you select your default VPC, you select all the subnet because all of them are, um, are basically um, public, right? But since we know our VPC, right? I do know my VPC, right? So I'm going to use my project VPC, yeah, and then I'm going to select my two public subnet, right? I'm going to select my two public subnet. So the reason why I'm selecting public is because it has to communicate outside of my VPC, right? By default, uh, uh, VPC does the database doesn't have IP public IP address, right? So they cannot communicate outside if you don't allow the communication, right? So if you're done selecting, please click on create. Please, if you're done creating, please click on create, right? So now we have created our subnet group, right? Which is more of like our subnet for database, right? So let's go ahead and now click on database, right? So let's create now our source database, right? Let's create now our source database, right? So click on database, as you can see here, click on database. When you have clicked on database, click on create database. Right, click on create database. As you can see here, we have different database type, right? You have Postgres, you have IBM, Microsoft, Oracle, MariaDB, Aurora, right? So, but we are going to select what? MySQL, right? We are going to select MySQL. And in the meantime, do you guys have MySQL Workbench installed on your laptop? If not, that is okay, that can be fine. Okay, Fidel says yes. Thank God. Yeah, I was going to feel bad that I didn't pass that. So in the meantime, please, you can just while we are creating it, right? What you can do is that you can download my SQL Workbench. It's an application, right? So because we're going to use that application to uh, to put in data in our database, right? We're going to use it to put data in our database. If you can see here, it is MySQL Workbench, right? So you can just do a quick Google search, MySQL Workbench, and then you click on download, right? You download the application, right? Please, if you can do it really quick, that would be fantastic. So while it's downloading, right, we are going to create our database, right? So make sure you select MySQL, right? Make sure you select MySQL. Then you scroll down. You allow the engine version as it is. So since this is a demo, right, we are not going to use a production setup, right, which has a high availability, fast and consistent performance. Basically, they're going to charge you more for this setup. And we are not going to still use this one because uh, this instance is intended for development use outside of production environment. So still, this setup is going to cost a lot, right? So we are basically doing a demo. That is why we are going to select free tier, right? And if you see with free tier, you just have single availability zone, right? We don't have standby database. We all know what standby database are with a read replica when it comes to production environment, especially when you want to make it to be uh, highly available and the performance highly optimized, right? So please let's all select free tier because for the purpose of our demo, right? I don't want Jeff Bezos to send you some couple of bills tonight because you did the project, right? So please select free tier. When you're done selecting free tier, make sure it is on single easy, right? Database, right? When you select that, so for our database identifier, basically this is the name of our database. We are going to type the name source DB, right? Source database, right? So when you pass the name source database, you scroll down, allow the master username as admin, right? Make sure you click on self-manage right? Password, because we want to manage, we want to self-manage the password, right? Because yeah, and the reason why is because during your migration process, you have to know the password of your database, right? You can allow AWS to manage it, but for the purpose of our demo, please select self-managed password. And then we are going to put our password here, right? So our password will be admin 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Capital A. So let me drop it in the chat, please. Please, let's all have the same password, and don't worry. Um, Nobody is going to hack your database, right? Basically, there's nothing inside except if the person wants to hack a database with ABC inside, right? And then you put admin 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So please make sure you have the same um password as I just typed in the chat, except if you want to use a different password, but make sure you remember your password. Make sure you have your password noted somewhere that you're not going to forget, because we are still going to use the same password during our migration process, right? So please, you scroll down, you scroll down, you scroll down under our VPC. Let me select my project VPC that I created, and then you see I have my uh, homogeneous database migration subnet group, right? And if you see publicly access, you see IDS assign a public IP address to a database. Amazon EC2 instance and other resources outside of your VPC can connect to your database. So if you select this, that means what? Resource outside of our VPC can connect with our database. So since I want resource outside of my VPC to connect with my database, I'm going to select yes, right? So you select it and then you scroll down, right? Let's click on create uh, VPC security group, right? Let's put the name as uh, what can I put? Saturday. I have a lot of security group roles today. Today, let me put the workshop professional Saturday below. Workshop homogeneous DB. Right. So, and then let me select my any of the availability zone. Right. AZ1A. Right. So let me scroll up. Let's scroll up. A brief recap about what we did. So make sure you're on full configuration. Right. You select MySQL for our database. Right. Make sure you're on free tier. You scroll down. Make sure you're on single AZ database deployment. You put the name of your DB, uh, uh, which is source database, for our user for our credential to be able to log in into our database. Please, you can uh, allow admin, click on self-manage, you put admin 1, 2, 3, 4, capital A, uh, admin 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the same thing. You scroll down, you scroll down, you scroll down. You select your VPC, the VPC that we use to create our subnet group. To be able to choose the subnet group that we created, you select public access, yes. You scroll down, and then, yeah, you scroll down and then you click on create database, right? Click on create database. Okay. So while it's creating, it's going to take some couple of time, right? What we are going to do is that, hey, let's go to North Virginia and create our target database, right? So we have not yet put, it's going to take some time. I want to save time. right? It's going to take some couple of time to create our database, right? So let's go to North Virginia and create our target database, right? The database that we are going to migrate data from the source to the target, right? So please, let me duplicate this tab, duplicate. Please, if you have created your source database, drop a yes in the chat, please. And if you have any issue while creating, just let me know so we can uh, look at it before moving forward. Mm, 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 mm. So please, we are going to move to North Virginia, right? So we are going to book a flight and then move to North Virginia, right? So US is one, right? So please book your flight and move to North Virginia, right? If you see this North Virginia, please move to North Virginia, where we are going to create our database, our target database to save time, right? And then we are going to come back and put some content in the source database. Come on. All right. Okay, so what we are going to do is that we are going to do the same thing as we did for the source database, right? We are going to create another same database, right? So let's create subnet group. I'll be fast here because we already know how to create the subnet group and as well as the database, right? So please, if you have any question, let me know so I can slow down or I can help you out, right? So click on create subnet group. The first thing we're creating is a subnet group because we want to uh, specify the environment that we want our database to be created. Let me say target DB subnet group. Subnet. Right, so let me put the name of my subnet group as target DB subnet group. So for my VPC, I'm going to select my project VPC. This is a different VPC. If you have noticed, this other VPC ends with 92, while the other one ends with 30. Right. So I use a different VPC, and if you have a default VPC, you can still use another default VPC. You know that VPC is VPC are region-based service, right? So basically, they are sitting in one region. You can The default VPC that is sitting in North Virginia is different from the default VPC that is sitting in Oregon, right? So please make sure you select your your default VPC. If you have another specific VPC that you're using, you can use it so far as you know where the public subnet is, right? So let's choose availability zone. I have a lot. So let me just choose all of them because I don't know where my subnet are located, in which availability zone. Okay. Public and public. Right. So if I remove this one, technically I've located that is in AZ1, A and 1B, right? So let's create our subnet group. Right. So let's go ahead now and create our target database. Right. Let's click on create database. Okay. So let's all select our MySQL. Right. We select MySQL. We scroll down, scroll down, So, not sure. So let me select dev and test. Right. So let me select dev and test. Is they have removed the okay, okay. I thought that I exceeded uh my free tier. Um, this is the question. Yeah. So please let's select our free tier and then select single easy. Scroll down. Let's put the name as our target DB. Target uh, DB. Our master name is admin. So let's put our password, the same password as we used. Okay. I don't want to use a strong password. Choose my own password. Admin 1234. Admin 1234. Right. So you put admin 1234, admin 1234. You scroll down. Please select the VPC that you use to create your subnet group. You select public access, yes, and then let's please click on create, and then you can put the name Homogenous. VP migration. Right. And then let me select AZ1A, and then yeah, that's all. So let me scroll up again. So basically we select MySQL, you scroll down, free tier, scroll down, single AZ, you scroll down, you put your database, the name, right? Make sure your username admin, then self-managed password, the password admin1234. You scroll down, you scroll down. Under your VPC, please select your VPC, your project VPC, your default VPC, but the VPC that you use to create your subnet group. You select public access, yes, because I want us to communicate outside. For security group, please click on create new security group because we are in a new region, right? So you scroll down and let's click on create database. Right. So let's click on create database. No, I don't want to save it. So now we have our target DB and we also have our source database, right? So before putting some content in our database, right, let's adjust a bit the security group role, right? So why do we have to adjust the security group? Right now, my database can only communicate with, uh, it has oh, sorry guys. My network is not friendly with me. Okay. Okay. So, yeah, I hope we are all following it. So, let's go ahead and modify our security group role, right? So, because we want to enable communication between two database, which is in two different region, right? Which is in two different uh, um, environment, right? So please, let's all click on the source DB and let's go and modify the database, right? So let me click on VPC security group. Let me open it in a new tab. Let me open it in a new tab. Okay. And if you see, this is our workshop, homogeneous database migration, right? So select it. Either you can select it or you can just click on it directly, right? Basically, what we want to do is that we want to edit the inbound rule, right? To allow traffic coming from, uh, uh, to allow the communication from our database to the target DB, right? Right now, the only communication that is enabled is the communication between between the laptop or the communication between my Aurora database with my laptop, right? So let's now enable the communication between this database, right? So that the database can send traffic to another region, right? So Um, what I would tell you guys is that for the purpose of the demo, right, we are going to select Aurora and then we are going to select all traffic. You can search for MySQL, right, and then we are going to select IPv4 from anywhere. But this is not best practice, right? Just for the purpose of the demo and to avoid networking issue, right, front and back, right. I want everyone to select Aurora and IPv4 anyway, right? If you see, this will allow, uh, uh, this is not a recommended setting for, right, to use, right? So please make sure you select it. It's not recommended. So in your work environment, never use this, and never select IPv4 from anywhere, right? Always specify. So the best practice is that if you want to allow traffic from a specific VPC, right, or a specific, okay, let's say you want to accept traffic from an instance, right, you can select custom and then you can paste the IP address of your instance. Let's say the IP address is 10.0 dot 0 dot 10.0 okay 0.0.0/16, right? Okay, let's say this our VPC CIDR block range, right? So you are going to select this, right? So that hey, when traffic you check when traffic coming from this CIDR block, when any traffic coming from this CIDR block range in our environment to our database, hey, you should allow it. Ben, technically we are modifying our source database, right? So so basically you have to move to your source DB, right? Navigate back to your source database, which is in Oregon, and then why is it taking time to load? Okay, yeah. Yeah, so you navigate to your source DB, you click on the name of your source DB, you scroll down, and then you click on security group role, right? Please, you click on security group role on security group, VPC security group, right, is going to bring you here and you select your VPC. your security group, and then and you click on edit inbound rule, right? So we are going to share the recording. Eric is going to address that. So he's going to share the recording, right? So Celestine, for best practice, please, you are always going to choose you are going to put in the IP address of your of this the target DB, or the endpoint of your target DB, so that they can communicate between each other appropriately. So for database, please, whenever you're going to do this migration, please never you select anywhere, right? Because I want to avoid networking issue and troubleshooting as much as possible. Right, that's why I'm selecting from anywhere, right? I could have also select all traffic, which is HTTP, HTTPS, UDP, any kind of traffic coming outside of my uh, network can come in. But I'm just going to allow um, Aurora, right? But if we have any issue there, we are going to come and select all traffic. So technically, let's please select Aurora, right? And then uh, all traffic, the source type, uh, IPv4 anywhere, right? And then let's click on save rule, right? So I've saved my role. So let me do the same thing with my uh, target DB, right? So let me duplicate this tab. Okay, let me first access. So let me do also the same thing with my target DB, right? So let me allow traffic from coming from my SQL to access my database, right? So let me select, so the reason why we have the same port rule twice is because you're trying to communicate with two setup that is in two different regions. By default, if you know the uh, uh, AWS policies that by default, resources doesn't have permission to communicate with each other, first of all. Secondly, it is isolated. That means what? So far as you don't specify where traffic can come in, right? It you can traffic cannot get into your environment, right? Okay, let's just take this example, Stanley. We have our target database, right? If you don't specify, and we are trying to send data from our source DB to our target database, right? We are trying to send data from our source DB to our target database, right? So if we don't put a security group rule that allow the traffic coming from our source DB to our target database, automatically it's going to reject that traffic, right? So that is why I'm creating the security group rule for the database, for the target database. And for the source DB, I'm creating it because we are going to put data in our source database for the purpose of our demo. Right. So since you are going to put data in our source demo, and I don't want to face networking issue, as I said, right, that is why I enable my SQL or traffic from anywhere, right? So let's do the same thing, right? But if the database were in the same environment, right? If the database were in the same environment, where's my data? Let me check it. Where's this one? This was okay, this is one. So if my database were in the same region, let's say Oregon, right? I will have choose the same VPC, and I will have passed in my cost myself, and I will have passed in I will have used the same security group rule for the two database, right? But since that in two different regions, we have to do the same modification for the two database type, which is separated in two different region, right? I hope I've answered your question, Stanley. Uh, do you guys have any other question, please, before we move forward with our any other question, or are we good? Stanley, have I answered your question, please? Okay, if no question, um, let's proceed, right? So please, let's select our homogeneous database security group rule for our target database, right? Let's select inbound rule. So what you have to have in mind is that whenever your work environment, right, you only have to set up for your target database, right? Forget all what we did for our source DB. Since you already have the source database in your working environment, right? Because you want to migrate from a database that is already existing with data inside, right? So you don't have to do the all of what we did for the source database. All you have to set up is your target database and set up your security group role and yeah. So okay, let me explain a bit if it was an on-prem environment, right? So if it was an on-prem environment, you add a security group role, select MySQL, Aurora, right? And custom, you are going to pass in the IP address of your on-prem environment, right? You're going to pass in what? The IP of your on-prem environment, of your of your server on your on-prem environment. You know that your phone, your laptop has a specific IP address, right? So you're going to pass in the IP address of your uh, 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 of the server where your database is located, right? So, but since it's on the cloud, right, and we don't want to face any issue, networking issue, I don't want. So even if it was on-prem, I don't want to. Uh, as I said, networking issue. Let me select uh, IPv4 from anywhere, right, and then let me click on save rule, and then let me click yeah save rule. So, so right now I've modified my two IP addresses in such a way that it's able to communicate appropriately with the two with the database that is in Oregon with the other one that is in North Virginia, right? So let's go ahead now and put some content in our database, right? Uh, let's please open MySQL Workbench. Let's please open MySQL Workbench. Okay, let me bring my workbench here. Right. Okay, let me check the chart, but I'm still not so clear. I understand why there's one for this open with all traffic, but the other with specific IP. I think Stan asks why we have to know the default and the one with added. Yeah, so Stanley, the reason why we have two is that one by default, when you create it, by default you attach with your uh your laptop IP address, right? So by default you attach with your laptop IP address, right? And the other one is the one that we attach it. So when you create your your uh your database, right? When you create with when creating, you automatically attach your IP address the uh, to the database on the security group in such a that you're able to access it, right? So Um, yeah, so one has been created when creating a security group automatically. That default we see is for our local PC. Yes. So okay, what you can do is that later on you can still try it, right? Later on you can still try it. You can try it how? You can basically create a database. Okay, you can just type what is my IP address on the internet, right? You get your IP address and then you note it down. Then you go ahead and create now your database. You see and then you go now to security group where you'll be able to get you see you'll be the same IP address. Yeah. So let's set up, you're welcome, Stanley. Let's set up now our connection, right? Let's put in some content in our database, right? So let me set up my connection, right? So let me say source DB. Let me put the name source DB, right? My host name, right? For my host name, I'm going to copy the endpoint, right? I'm going to copy the endpoint. So my host name, I'm going to remove this IP address since if it was from a server, if my database was sitting on a server, I would have put the IP address on my server. But since database doesn't have IP address, public IP address, I'm going to put the endpoint, my database endpoint, right? If you see, this is my database endpoint. I copied here. Source DB. Make sure you're copying for your source DB. And then the port range, MySQL port is what? 3306, right? And then where our username was admin, our username was admin, and then the password, if you see store in keychain, right? You click on it, then let's put our password, which were capital A, admin, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then click on OK, right? And then let me click on test connection, right? So if you have this connection, successful connection, that means what? You successfully made a connection between your source database and your MySQL workbench, which is sitting on your laptop, right? So let me click on OK, right? When you're done testing your connection, you click on OK, right? So let's do the same thing for our target database, right? So technically, we don't need to do the same thing uh, uh, right now, right? So we all know that our target DB is empty, right? We all know that our target DB is empty, right? So let's allow the connection between our target DB. Uh, okay, no, let's just do it once, right? Since we are already on Workbench, right? So let's do the same thing, right? Let's go and copy our endpoint for our target DB. Okay. So if you see here, under connectivity and security, you copy the endpoint, right? So let me put the name, target DB, target DB. Then the host name, which is my IP, I don't want it. I paste my host name, and then the username is admin. Then the password, which is on store keychain, is admin 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. Okay. And I click on test connection. So the reason why I'm testing this is because, hey, we have to make sure that the connection between uh, uh, our workbench and our uh, database has been set up appropriately, right? It's successful, right? And when you are done, click on OK, right? So I've set up the connection between our source DB and our target DB successfully, right? So what we are going to do right now is that we are going to put content in our source DB. And then we are going to go now on AWS and start our migration process. And you are going to see how the migration is going, our content in our source database, which is in Oregon region, is going to be migrated to our database, which is in North Virginia. Right. So let's go ahead and put some content in our source DB. Please just click on your source DB. Please click on your source DB. Uh, okay, I see iPhone says you got lost on the connection, workbench connection. So where are you, please? At what level are you? Okay, let me just go back, please. Let me just a few steps back. So, I don't know if your name is iPhone, but please, uh, on my SQL workbench, you see a plus button here, right? A little plus button. You click on it, right, to set up a connection, right? For you to set up the connection between your workbench and your database, right, you're going to put the name. Okay, if you're doing the first connection, which is for your source database, you put the name source DB, right, DB, right. Then now you go on your database, you go on your source database, right? This is our target database, but take it as our source database. You go and then you copy the endpoint, right? The endpoint is almost like, I'll say the IP address, like it's to identify the database that we are trying to connect to, right? So you copy the endpoint, you come back to our workbench, under host name, you remove the host name, then you paste your endpoint that you copied. Right. The username, you remember that our username when creating our database was what? Admin, right? We type admin. And then for our password, you remember we also type our password, which were admin1234, right? Please click on store keychain and then you type your password, which is admin, right? 1234. And you click on OK, right? When you're done, you click on test connection. Right. When you click on test connection, if it says successful, that means you have done the connection successfully, and you can click on OK. But if it fails, that means there's a problem with your security group or either the way you set up your environment, right? Which we are not going to troubleshoot it now, right? We are going to troubleshoot any troubleshooting after the session, right? So I hope iPhone you are able to be on track with what we are doing right now. So what you can do is that you can just do it for the source database, right? And then the rest we are going to do it later. You're welcome. So what is connection? What is connection method? I just explained how we do the connection. Why are you please, Fidelis? At what level are you please? Okay,
So
maybe.
this Fidel. So on my MySQL connection, there's a dialog box. I guess it's my version. I don't know, but there's connection method where you can choose standard.
Yeah, just allow standard. Yeah, allow the standard.
Okay. So because I did that, it failed. So I was wondering if
Okay, so you put the name, you select the endpoint, and then when you put your username, and then you put your password correctly, normally it's not supposed to fail. But if it failed, that means you have some few points that you have to address. Either it's not in the public subnet, either the security group will have not been defined properly, or the credential is not the same as the one you're trying to put in. Right? So we are going to look at it. If it still fail, we are going to troubleshoot actually after we are done. Right.
yeah. So somehow I was able to connect without specifying the name, target, and source from different connections. I have my query editor um, on a different interface, so I'll look into it.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Okay.
have two successful connections. Like I
Uh,
have a query editor, but when I try to do it that way, I can name it and say source DB.
okay.
I'll go over it. Not an
Yeah.
issue.
Okay, I understand. It's because you're trying to put in the same name as you already, I think you're trying to use the same name. It happened
Mm,
to me once, yeah, one day
yeah,
that I was trying to, yeah.
yeah.
Probably,
I'm good. I'm good. I
okay,
see both connections. I'm fine.
okay, good. So please access your source database uh, uh, connection so that we are able to put some content in our source database, right? So let me click on administration. So let's please all click on administration. So we want to input data. Okay, let me check that data. Okay, let me check it and then let me paste the data here in the chat. Right. Uh, okay, I've sent uh, the file that we are going to use that has our data, structured database, structured data. So in the chat, right? So please, you can download it. Right? So while it's downloading, please click on data import slash restore, right? Data import slash restore under administration, right? So we want to input from self-contained file, right? Input from self-contained file, right? And then let's click on this three dot that is at the end, right? And then I'll select the file that I just shared in the chat, right? Select the file, the file that I just shared in the chat, please. Make sure you download it and then you select it, right? So when you select it, you scroll down and then you see start import, right? Please, you click on start import. So what we are currently doing is that we are putting some data inside our source database, right? Okay, so we have import our file, right? So let's go to schema, right? Let me refresh. I'm seeing Solaristic model, right? Let me scroll down. Uh, okay, yeah, this is it. So if you can see here, we have some data in our database, right? I don't know why my internet is slow. Yeah. We have some data in our database, right? If you can see payment, yeah, we have some data in our database, right? We have some data in our database. So what we just did now, we know that database you can have username, password, and what and so on, right? So right now we have put in some data in our database, right? But we have not put anything in our target database, right? So now this is where now the migration start, right? So all what we did from the beginning, apart setting up the target DB, was to set up the source DB, actually where we want to migrate from, right? So now that at least we have a database and we have data inside our source DB, right? That we are able to be sure that, hey, we have something in our database, but we have nothing in our target DB, right? So now let's go ahead now and start our migration process, right? So, so if you have import your data successfully here as mine and you have data inside, that means you have successfully, yeah, putting data in your database, right? So right now, let's go ahead now and start our migration process, right? So please make sure you're in Oregon. Search for, we are going to search for DMS, which is Database Migration Service. So Database Migration Service is a tool that AWS offers to us that we utilize to perform our migration project, right? But recently they launched a new service, which is AWS Transform. But this one, it helps a lot at the level of assessment, collecting data, assessment fees, and I think I have a lot of amazing feature in AWS Transform, but we're not going to talk about that today, right? So please, let's click on Database Migration Service. Let's click on Database Migration Service, and let's start our migration, right? Just I love migration. I love this part. It remembers me when I was working with a company, and then we were doing application migration. And migration is one of the projects that it requires you just to have knowledge about your environment. It requires you to have knowledge about the cloud. If you're migrating to the cloud, it requires you to have knowledge about the cloud environment. If you're migrating from, okay, let's say on-prem to the cloud, it requires you to, if you master your cloud environment, trust me, migration is something that is very easy. Application migration, database migration, so far as you're able to recommend to a client that, hey, use this setup. Or let's say during your assessment phase, you have identified the problem, the problem that they are facing, right? You have drawn your roadmap, how you're going to carry on your migration, and then you have specified the services that you're going to use based on the best practice, right? Cost optimization based on the well-architected framework. Let me say it like that, right? Based on the well-architected framework, you're going to select appropriate service that you're going to use for your migration project, right? So technically is to say, not technically, basically is to say migration is a project that if you master the cloud, if you master your EC2 instance, S3, RDS, networking, if you master IAM, all those services, hey, migration will not be a challenge for you, right? No matter which environment you're joining, even if you're doing cloud to cloud migration and it's your first time getting to Azure or GCP, right? It's almost the same service, almost the same resources that are providing, just a naming convention that change, right? So please, let's come to our DMS. If you navigate to DMS, please, under migrate data, right? Under migrate data, you see replication instance, right? Click on replication instance. We are going to create our replication instance, right? So what is this replication instance? This replication instance is the instance that is going to carry the migration. Is the one that is going to perform our migration process, right? So what is going to happen behind the scenes is that AWS is going to create a server which is going to copy our data from our source DB to our target DB, right? So with that said, let's click on create replication instance. And what I love with AWS is that they give you a lot of documentation that you can read, right? You can read about it and, hey, optimize your project or maybe implement the latest updates, the latest change and all that, right? So please, let's put in our name. Let's name our application instance as homogeneous. DB migration. Right, copy, paste. It's optional. I don't need it. Right. So please make sure you select your homogeneous migration. You scroll down. Under high availability, please choose dev or test, single AZ. Right. Under VPC, right, we are going to select our VPC, project VPC that we have been selecting. Right. And then you scroll down. Under availability zone, let me check. West 2A. Yeah, let me choose West 2A. And then under security group rule, I'll select the workshop security group rule that we created. Right. And then that is all what we're going to select. So let me scroll up again. So what we did is that we put the name, migration, homogeneous database migration. You scroll down. If you want, you can put a description, but since it's optional, and yeah, I'm just going to allow it. But in your working environment, always make sure you put a description, right, about what is this application instance all about. You scroll down. We select under high availability, since we are just doing a test, since for the purpose of the demo, we select dev or test workload, which use just a single availability zone. We scroll down, we select our project VPC, right? Make sure public, yeah, is accessible. Then we select our availability zone. I'll select 2A, right? And please select your VPC your security group rule that you created, right? Then you scroll down, and click on create application instance. All right. Click on create application instance. All right. You click on create application instance. So it's going to take some couple of time to create, right? So after creating our application instance, so let's click on endpoint. All right. While it's creating, let's click on endpoint, and then let's click on create endpoint. Okay, let me check if he has created my application instance. Okay. Please, it's still creating. So let's wait for it to be, because we are going to use this to do to test our connection, right? To set up our endpoint. We are going to use our homogeneous replication instance to test our connection on endpoint. So we have to wait for it to be created. Right? So it's going to take some couple of minutes. I think it's usually um, 3 to 5 minutes. Right. So any questions? So let me pause here while it's creating our application instance. It's going to take like 5 minutes or 3 minutes, between 5 to 10 minutes to get created. Because behind the scene, what's happening is that AWS is creating a server, installing all the dependency that is needed to migrate our data from our source database to our target database. Right. So behind the scene, what's happening here is that a new server is getting created, right? And then all the dependency that is needed to perform the migration project is being installed, right? And when it's being installed, when you'll be done, we're going to test our connection, right? And then we are going now to use database migration task to assign the task to be able to assign the task to this server to perform the migration, right? So to be honest, this project, when I do it alone, okay, let's say when I do this demo alone, right, it take me appropriately, like um, let's say 20 to 15 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, because of this particular place that I have to wait at least 5 minutes for it to be up and running, right? But the rest is, the project is very simple and easy to understand. So please, I'll pause here. Any questions so far? Any question or any troubleshooting? Okay. I believe if no question, no troubleshooting, that means we are all good, we are all on the same spot, right? So let's wait some couple of minutes while it's creating our database. Okay, as a cloud engineer who is really interested in database, what do I really need to pay attention to? General database slash application migration. So let's start with application migration first, right? So if you're engineer that are really interested in application and database migration, let's start with application first of all. If you want to do cloud migration, definitely nowadays that is what is at the trend, cloud migration and maybe on-prem to cloud or private cloud to public cloud and so on. You have to master the environment in which you want to work on. Let's say if you want to be migrating from on-prem to the cloud, then you need to master the cloud to be able to provide the best service, right? So because when a client will reach out to you and ask you, okay, currently we are facing some difficulties with scaling our infrastructure on-prem or let's say private cloud because they don't offer them the possibility to scale up their resources appropriately. And if they decide to scale up, they're unable to scale down when the traffic goes down, right? So you as an engineer, you need to first have that global view of first have all the global view of all the services, right? And then when they expose you the problem of scalability, right? Okay, you have understood the problem, and then they have also addressed the fact that hey, when the traffic goes down, they are not able to scale down the environment to be able to save costs. Okay, so that means they also have cost on the problem, right? So what do you have to do as an engineer? If you have to recommend them to use AWS, the first thing you're going to do is that, okay, when migrating, if they decide, hey, we don't want to change our structure, right? If they say, okay, we want to move to the cloud as fast as possible, there are different migration strategies that you can use, right? There is rehost, refactor, repurchase, retain, right, and retire and relocate, right? So there are different migration strategies that you can use, but for that particular project, if the client say, okay, I want to move, yes, re-platform too. I want to move as fast as possible to the cloud, right? Definitely, you're going to use the rehost, right? So you're going to use the rehost. But now, what are you going to do? Since their problem were because the aim goal of migration is to address the client problem, is to solve their problem, right, is to solve the challenges that they were facing, right? So since they were facing scalability problem, they're going to use now auto scaling on the cloud to now scale up their server and then make sure you configure the metrics to scale up or scale down based on the traffic that comes into the server, right? That will easily help to save them cost and scale their environment appropriately, right? And then the rest of the project now, we can now bring on some solution to the rest of the problem that they have. Based on the situation or maybe their finance or whatever, right? So what you have to focus on is, first of all, one, you have to understand the environment that you want to work on, right? You have to have a global view. Most of the time, if you hear about, most of the time company reach out to consultant, private, like people that are consultant, or let's say some companies that are consult that offer consulting services, is because they have engineers in their team that have knowledge on all the services and can provide the best solution, right, for the project or to address the problem that you're currently facing, right? So what I recommend you is that, hey, have a global view on all the services, right? You need to know which service you can use or you can recommend to a client to solve a particular problem that they're facing, right? We have a lot of service on AWS cloud, right? You have microservice, you have serverless, uh, you have EC2, you have a lot of them, right? That storage, S3, and what's right? And then when it comes down to database, basically the solution I provide you also have database inside, right? So when it comes down to database, um, well, database is also broad, right? So then, as I said, you have to understand the different migration strategy, which is if you're going to do migration, homogeneous migration or heterogeneous migration, first of all, right? I also need to first know how migration takes place, the different steps before migration, right? Before actually carry, to be honest with you, the real work before even starting doing this demo is at the level of the assessment phase and the mobilization. Because for migration to take place, you have three phases: assessment phase, mobilization phase, and migration and modernize phase, right? So for you to even be able to perform this project as you see here, right? Or for you to be able to perform, to carry on the migration, hey, you need to understand the environment, right? You need to understand the environment in which the customer is sitting. What problem are they facing, right? So basically the assessment phase, we're going to perform assessment on the client's environment to be able to understand the problem they're facing. They're going to do meetings with them. So you need to understand how does the assessment phase works, first of all. Then when you're done doing your assessment, and after you've created your business use case, then the next thing is what? Yes, also with application discovery service agent. Thank you for that quick one, Lucky. Um, yeah. So I'll keep on explaining why waiting for my application, my homogeneous migration to be up and running, right? So basically, yeah, I'm waiting for it to be, as I said, it's going to take some couple of time to be up and running. So what is the mobilization phase? Mobilization phase is basically a phase where you're going to create your case study, right? What is a case study? Basically, you're going to create documents, or maybe let's say, hey, you're going to break down how you're going to actually carry on your migration, right? You're going to break down and map service by service. Okay, let's say you want to migrate from on-prem to the cloud, and the client is using a MySQL database. and you want to go to, let's say the client wants to use a Postgres DB, right? A Postgres DB. What you're going to do is that you're going to map the resources, right? Let's say you're going to say, okay, we want to move from MySQL to Postgres or to a non-SQL database, right? What strategy you're going to use? You're going to use what? A heterogeneous database migration, right? You're going to use what? A heterogeneous uh, database migration, right? And okay. A heterogeneous database migration, and then later on, what you can do, what you're going to do is that then you're going to now have what you call create your business plan. After creating your business plan for the project, then now you go now with your migration and mobilization phase, which is basically a phase where you choose the migration strategy to use based on the assessment phase and mobilization phase, and then you perform your migration smoothly, right? So I see here in the chat. Okay, our
Okay,
replication
guys.
is
Can you hear me?
yes, 5 on 5.
Okay, guys. While we're waiting for the creation to be complete, just to say, this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? All you are seeing here in this session is just the tip of the iceberg of what we offer at SolarVistech, right? Yes, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to explain, and there's a lot to discover, right? It's just the tip of the iceberg. And again, this is just to tell you that, hey, if you want to go deep dive into this, all that Asaph is learning and all that Asaph is explaining, you will need to commit time, right? You can't learn all of this in a day, right? We are just telling you that, yes, these are the opportunities that are there outside, things that recruiters are looking for in terms of projects and all of that. So there's a lot to learn, right? If Asaph is to explain all of this, we are going to stay on the call the whole night or the whole day, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. So the thing is that if you want to learn or go deep dive into this, the best thing will be to our advice to join the community, right? Join the community. Yeah, because it doesn't end here. You might be on the call and a recruiter asks you questions that are even outside this project, right? And if you've not gone through an in-depth training on be able to relate, connect the concepts and connect the services and AWS solutions one another, you might find yourself not just giving shallow information, right? So these days, recruiters are looking for people who can go deep dive into concept, who can connect solutions and services together, and solve a problem, right? So that's just by the way. That's just by the way. So if you are on the call here, just know that this is just the tip of the iceberg. And the best thing, if you want to have a deep understanding, is to take a deep dive training, right? Yeah, is to take a deep dive training. And just next year, let me not say next year again, next month, right? Just a few weeks from
Yeah.
now, we're going to launch our next cohort, right? Our next cohort that's starting in January is going to be a 6 to 8 months intensive deep dive training on AWS. That means you're going to cover most of the core services and solutions in AWS, right? And also you're going to cover DevOps tools, including Terraform, Ansible. You're going to cover Linux, Python, Docker, Kubernetes, right? And all of this is to make you a full-time AWS DevOps engineer, right? This is just a tip of the iceberg that we're giving you here. But then we're also giving you the opportunity to be part of a community that can, build your lifetime career, change your life, right? And we'll be happy to welcome you. So if you are here, just know that this is the first step. I'm going to drop my contacts on the chat, right? I'm going to drop my contacts on the chat, WhatsApp. You can reach out to me. If you have any questions, you have any doubts, any clarification, I'll be ready to answer anything and guide you on the process. And why not help you, build your career, and in the next few months you will be able to get a job, right? Yes. And just so you know, one of our students, not long ago, she got a job just because of our core project that we did in the community, right? She just contacted somebody at an event, and then they were talking. She told the person that this is a project I've done, this is what I solved, this is a solution I provided. And from there, she didn't go to an interview. Just from that discussion, she got a job, right? That's why we don't joke when it comes to projects, right? We don't joke. So this project you are experiencing here is just one of a bit of them, right? There are other deep core projects that if you join the community, you're going to get a benefit of, and we'll be ready to help you. So that was just by the way. And in the meantime, I'm going to drop our my LinkedIn profile as well and my contact. You can connect with me, and also our social media handles for Solar Technologies. You can join us and be part of the community. Yeah, Asaph, you can come in. That was just by the way for the short break. Thank you all.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Eric, for that quick one. Yeah. Thank you so much. I think I talked sometimes when I start explaining when I get into project, I usually say I just lost into the project, right? So what we are going to do is that we are going to, since it has been created, we are going to finish with our demo, right? Before answering any other question, right? And as Eric said, we are currently launching a new cohort next month. And if you want to know more, right, you can join the session. Or anyway, let's first finish with our session of today. Then all the rest of the question, we are going to address it after the project, right? So that we can have a smooth recording, right? So please, when you're done having your homogeneous migration replication instance, if you see it as created, right, that means AWS is done. Jeff Bezos is done creating my replication instance. Now let's create our endpoint. Basically, what are endpoint? Endpoint are basically, hey, you're saying that, hey, okay, click on create. You're saying that, hey, I want to specify my source database from where I want to migrate from, right? So let me select my source database. Let me select RDS DB instance, right? So I have my source database here, so I can just select it, right? And then I scroll down. You have established a connection, but want to migrate a complete DB or a schema. So I'm coming to that, Fidelis, please. I'm coming to that, please. And don't worry, actually is to migrate a particular schema. You're going to see how we do it, right? So, yeah. Provide access information manually. So please select source DB, right? And then select, and please, Fidelis, follow on with what we are doing, and we are going to see that along the line is going to address the question that you asked in the question in the chat, right? So you select your source DB, right? So, but if you select it and you don't see your source DB, I'm going to show you how to set the connection. Basically, you need to set up this endpoint, right? So, because this endpoint, hey, it specify your source from where do you want to migrate from, right? And we are going to create another one, which is our target endpoint. And to where do you want to migrate to, right? So you select your source, you scroll down. Okay, the password, our password is what? Admin. That is why I said password is very, very important. So I removed the secure socket layer. We didn't attach any certificate, right? So I'll just, yeah. So let me select our homogeneous, and then please, you click on test endpoint connection on the drop down, right? Which is below, and then click on run test, right? Click on run test. Click on run test. So what is happening behind the scene is that it's testing the connection between the endpoint that you're trying to create here, uh, between the replication instance and the endpoint between your application instance and your source database, right? And if you see here, hey, my connection is successful, right? If you see here, hey, my connection is successful, okay. Since it's successful, let me click on what? Create endpoint, right? Create endpoint, right? So let me create another endpoint. This time around is the endpoint of my target DB to where I want to migrate my data to, right? So let me select target, right? Let me put the target endpoint identifier. So when you select target, if you see here, if I select it, right, I don't have my target endpoint. Is that a problem? No, right? Because we are engineers, definitely, right? So what are we going to do? Let's pass our identifier is basically the name, right? Our identifier is basically the name, right? Our identifier is basically the name, MySQL. Okay. Our identifier is basically the name. So let me remove this source DB, right? Source DB. Let me put target, right? Let me put target, right? Scroll down. Make sure your engine, your target engine is what? MySQL, right? And provide access manually, right? Uh, yeah, I'm going to remove this. The server name, I'm going to paste the endpoint, my target endpoint, right? The same target endpoint that we use, right, under our connectivity. Let me copy my target endpoint and yeah, and put it here, right? And then my password is admin. Password is admin. I'll remove this, right? So let me scroll up again. So I select target endpoint. Since I select with AWS and since I'm not in the same region where I created my target database, I'm not able to visualize or it's not able to get my target database from here, right? So what am I going to do? I have to pass the information manually, right? So I select target endpoint, scroll down, put the endpoint identifier, which is the name of my server or the name that I want to easily recognize my database, right? Which is target DB, as you can see here, right? Target DB, right? And then, come on, okay. And then you scroll down, make sure the engine type, you have different engine type, right? You have different engine type. So make sure the engine type you're selecting is MySQL, and then provide access manually. You pass the endpoint of your server manually, right? Then you put the port and then a password, and then let's test our connection, right? Let's test our connection. Make sure you select your homogeneous replication instance and you click on run test, right? So what is happening is that it's going to test our connection behind the scene, right? Testing the connection between our target endpoint and between our application instance with our target database, right? It's testing the endpoint, right? Checking that it is the communication, that the communication between uh, uh, my target database and the application instance is good, right? So let's wait some few seconds, right? So if you see, check here, hey, my connection is successful, right? My connection is what? Successful, right? So let me click on what? Create endpoint. Right. So if you see here, I've created my target and my source database, right? This is where now we are all going to mix all of them together. So what we just did is that, hey, we created our we created our source database, or let's say you have your source database where you want to migrate your data from, right? And we have created our target database where we want to migrate our data to, right? Now that we have all those two environments set up, how do you now enable the communication between those two? We have created our application instance, which is the instance that is actually there is going to carry on the migration process behind the scene. And it's being created by AWS. You don't have to stress about that server, right? And then we have created the server. Now, we went ahead now and created what? Our endpoint. What is an endpoint? Basically, we created the connection between our source database and the replication instance that we created. And we also created the connection between our target database and the application instance that we just created, right? So now what we want to do now is that we want to then if it fail, so this is a thing. If your connection with the workbench works successfully, but if the connection um, the with the endpoint fail, that means it's either security group or right. So anyway, we are going to adjust. We are going to troubleshoot just after this, right? Because we are almost done, right? So right now, what we want to do now is to create a task. How do you want to migrate? Right. So let's click on create database migration task, right? To actually start our migration process, right? So let's pass the name. Let's put homogeneous DB. Let me put my DB small letter. Migration. Right. Homogeneous database migration. Right. So let's select our application instance that we created. Remember, is this instance that is going to carry on the migration process behind the scene, right? And let's select our source DB and our target DB, right? So if you see here, the migration type, migrate data from source to target once. That means one time. It's a one-time migration process. That means what? It's going to start the migration, it's going to start migrating your data from your source DB to your target DB. Just all the data that is just there once, right? And you have migrate and replicate. That means what? Migrate data from your source to target DB once and continue replicating all the changes, right? So you may have the question, but if I want to migrate and if there's an input of data that is, if there's data that is being put in the source database while I'm migrating, will it also migrate that data? So you have to select this option, right? So that you migrate and keep replicating all the changes that happens into that server, right? Even after the migration is completed, any other information that is put in that database is going to replicate it, right? And you have migrate, right? Replicate, which is migrate data from the source to target from now. That means what? From now, any other data that is going to be put in, that is going to be replicated, right? So due to time, I'm not going to explain all the features. Let's scroll down, right? And this is where Fidelis, you were having your question, how to migrate a particular schema, right? How to define a particular table. If you want to migrate just a particular table or you want to exclude a table from a migration, do your migration so you can define, right? So let's go ahead and define a particular schema, right? So let me enter schema, right? For my schema, you click on the add new selection rule. You scroll down. If I allow this, right, if I allow this, you migrate everything that is in my database, everything that is in my source database. But if I want to migrate a particular table, or let's say if I want to migrate a particular schema, right, what I'm going to do is, okay, let me copy this, right. So under source name, I'm going to remove this, and then I'm going to pass the name of the source that I want to migrate. Right. So I'm passing the name saying what? Hey, I want you just to migrate just the SolarVistec modules. Right. Don't migrate the system. Right. I don't want you to migrate the system. Please migrate just the SolarVistec module. Right. And with all the content that you have inside. And if you want to migrate just a particular table, you can specify the table name here. Right. From here, under tables, you can specify employee, customer, blah, blah. You can specify, right? And the action, if you want to include or you want to exclude the particular table, right? But let's allow it as include and let's allow it as it is, right? So please make sure the source name you select SolarVistec, right, as it is. Please make sure the naming convention has to be correct. If not, your migration is going to fail, right? Let me scroll down. So I'll turn off my pre-migration assessment. I'll turn it off. And then let me scroll up again. Right, what we did is that we specified the task. We scroll down, selected the replication instance that we created, selected our source database, selected our target database. So we just want to migrate our data, right? A one-time migration. Then we scroll down. Under selection rule, we added a rule that, hey, we want to migrate just the selected module, the source name, right, which is the SolarVistec module, right? And then the table we want to select, or we want to migrate all the tables that we have in that particular module. And then we scroll down, we uncheck the pre-migration assessment, this, and then click on create database migration task. Right. So it's going to take some couple of minutes while it's creating our migration task. To be honest, what I love in migration is that is when you know what you're doing. When okay, this is the thing. You have to be very careful with security measurement. I've done migration in banks. I've done migration worldwide. That is with in Dubai remotely, with remote job. Dubai, UK, also with banks. Most of them were with banks in the US and in UK, right? But what we have realized, what I'll say, what is common in all those migration is that, hey, they all have the same process, first of all, which is it doesn't matter if it is GCP to AWS or AWS to Microsoft, almost the same process, right? What you really have to pay attention is, hey, the security measurement. First of all, make sure there's no data leak, and then you're implementing the well-architected framework and with the least privilege permission. That means what? You don't give, like you don't select anywhere, IPv4 anywhere. Never do that, right? Thank God we are on record. So never do that, right? If you see here, our migration is taking place, right? If you see it's taking place and migration is in progress. Okay. If you see here, right, It's migrating our data. If you see here, right, it's migrating our tables, right? It's migrating our tables. And if I click on overview, right, it's migrating. So it's running, the task is running. So what's happening behind the scenes that is actually migrating our table, be follow, full loaded, blah, blah, blah. So it's copying everything and then copy and paste actually what it's doing. So please make sure you in an on-prem environment, what would do is SQL file to migrate the 20 tera. My question was how do you migrate a full database from on-prem to AWS? So to migrate a full database from on-prem to AWS, right? You see, Fidelis, you see at the level where we specify a schema, right? You see the level where we specify the schema, and you see at the level where we pass the Solavistic model, right? Then to pass the Solavistic model, we are instead going to allow that percentage but a slash, right? To migrate the full database, that means everything that's in the database, right? Allow that percentage symbol, right? And then it's going to copy. It means everything, just like the star. It means everything. Migrate everything that's in your database, right? So it's going to migrate everything from that database to the target database that you want to migrate, right? And then and when you if you have 20 terabyte of data, trust me, we have some migration process that took us like you see this migration that is just completed right now. It took us 2 days for it to be completed, just like we see here, right? And we have like we had how many database? I think we had 10, if not 10. We had a lot of database. It took us 2 days to just have one database to be migrated, right? And that was something that was fantastic. So yeah, for the purpose of the demo, let's continue with our class. If you can see here, it's completed, right? Load complete, 100%, migration progress, 100%. Okay, let's go and check now our target database. You're welcome, Fidelis. Let's go and check our target database. If it has actually migrated, right? So since we cannot access our the reason why I asked you guys to download Workbench is to be able to access the database, to be able to put in data, check in data, modify, whatsoever, right? So just like your VS Code, right? So if you can see here, hey, what we have here is what our Digitech module, right? And then we have our tables where you're able to see your customer data, right? You are able to see your customer data, right? And don't ask me where I took all this data from, right? So, and if you can see here, AWS DMS control, right, is actually the tool that were being used to do the migration. So, just a recap about our session. So we successfully did a region-to-region database, homogeneous database migration successfully. That means what? We migrated our data from Oregon to North Virginia, or let's say from China to US, and region to region migration, right? So we migrated from Oregon to North Virginia, right? And we had our success, and we had our migration process, which were successful, right? So any question regarding the migration process or project? And please, before we close our session, make sure you terminate all the resources that you have launched. Make sure you terminate all the resources that you have launched, right? So please, any questions? So let me start here and to answer question, and then okay, let me drop my LinkedIn handles in the chat so that we can connect on LinkedIn, and then we can discuss. Or maybe if you have deep dive question that has to do with migration, or if you have question regarding migration, Actually, migration is a project that I love to do because it requires me just few clicks and I'm good, right? So, with that said, we are good to go with our project, right? We are good to go with our project. We have our migration, which is successful, right? So, any troubleshootings? Okay, let me check the chat if I have any question. So, community group. Okay, let me get the handle and share it with you. Or you can just contact him. He has pasted his general. Okay. Okay, let me just paste the link in the group. Let me copy it and then share with you. We have a WhatsApp group. Yes, so you have to join the community so we can share the recording with you guys. Okay, let me pause the recording since we are done.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Okay, guys. So I just dropped the links to our social handles, right? So you can follow them, right? I want to know how was it? How was it? Let me get from you guys. How did it go, guys? You can feel free to unmute, right? And express yourself. Please, I may not accept texting in the chat. I want to hear someone talk, right? Let's hear from you, like firsthand, how it was. Guys, feel free to unmute.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, yeah, good evening, John.
I'm speaking all the way from France. The session was actually amazing. I actually learned a lot. To be frank, I am a DevOps engineer. I've been working for 5 years, but
Okay.
I have never done a migration. So it's like
Okay.
I'm doing you are doing an onboarding, and it's the first time I'm actually seeing the process.
Okay. Awesome. 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 That's amazing, John. That's amazing. And we're happy that you've learned a lot. And probably since you're already in the in the workspace, you can go right away and try to replicate this in your environment or try to customize it to fit the requirements of the environment, right? And that's just what we do. And just to let you know, if you have anyone who wants to go deep into this training, you can tell them to reach out to me, or you yourself, you can reach out to me. I just dropped my number in the chat. You can personally reach out to me because if you just go and follow our social media handles, you might miss an opportunity, right? You might just go and say, okay, because you are following, there are certain opportunities that you might not really get them, right? But if we stay in touch, I can always personally reach out to you or just send them to you. Or if you have any question, you can directly talk to me or clarify. I'll get the clarification if you have any questions, right? Yeah. So that's just it. Any other person, guys? Any other person? One last person.
Yes, please. This is Titi Lola. Please.
Oh, Titilola. All right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I joined in the middle of the class and I found
Okay.
it very interesting, very easy
Okay.
to use. I love it. I
Okay.
would like to you get in touch. So I don't
Okay.
know if
Sure.
I can get your number. You
Yes.
can drop
I'm
it.
dropping it. Yes. I'm dropping it here again. Let me just drop it right away. Just drop it. 23357 43270. So this might be for maybe for those who are going to be listening on our YouTube channel, right? So the number is +233, right? +233 5700 5700 43270 43270. So that's the contact. Maybe for those who might be following this session on our YouTube channel, right? So that's the contact. Okay, I think someone just dropped it. And also just to let you guys know, we have one of our students here who just completed the training. Lucky just completed training with us. So that's just to tell you that once you are in on this journey, you always have to keep learning, right? It doesn't end there. Yeah, it's a continuous journey. Yeah. So it's a pleasure to have all of you. And just one more thing before we go. We also offer training on data science and machine learning. Data science and machine learning deep dive for 8 months. We go deep dive on the concepts of Excel, Python, Power BI, and all the everything that's to do with machine learning, right? And also aside that, we offer training on cybersecurity. We go deep on cybersecurity, where you cover the key concepts. You have your certifications, and also if you want to go into digital marketing, why not? We are also here to help you, to upskill your marketing skills. And it's not only your marketing skill, but your AI-powered digital marketing skills, right? So we so much leverage on AI to make sure that you can upskill yourself in terms of, marketing, right? So that's it for today, guys. It's been a pleasure having you. And we do this every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks. Starting next year, we are going to go hard on these programs, on these workshops, and also going hard on our training program. So next year, January, we are going to kickstart all of these 4 training programs that I've listed for you guys, right? And like I said, they are very, very intensive. They are not crash courses, right? And they are not YouTube tutorials. Okay. So if you're joining, know
Yeah.
that it's going to be a transformative journey, right? It's going to be a transformative journey. It's not going to be a tutorial or maybe a YouTube tutorial or a crash course where you just come and play around. No, no, no. You're coming to transform your life for good, right? Yeah, and we are ready to hold your hand, whatever level you are, whether you have any background in tech or not. Personally, I didn't have any background in technology, right? I came from an agricultural background, and I've been in the tech space now for the past 5 years, right? So if I did it, you can do it, okay? And a lot more in the community. Actually, the CEO of Solavis Tech, in the name of Dr. Samba, couldn't make it because he's currently down. He would have loved to be in the session, but because of the flow he has, he couldn't be on the session. That's someone who came from a medical background, right? And now he is a full-time cloud DevOps engineer and also the CEO of Solavis Tech. So if we've done it, that means we can do it, guys. So we're ready to welcome you in the community. I'll drop my number. Get in touch with me. I'll wait to hold your hand together. Thank you all, and have an amazing weekend.
Thank you.
Sure. Asaph, may you kindly end the recording for me?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
And if
Thank
you have
you
any
so much.
questions,
Thank you so much, for Asaph. Thank you so much. Thank you so
yeah.
much. You've
So,
done so much.
and just to
Yeah.
add,
Yep.
if you have any question regarding the project,
Sure. You can stop the recording so we end the session.
yeah. I think my network is breaking. Yeah. All right, guys.
This
Thank
is
you.
Fidel again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, please.
Yes,
I
Fidelis?
have a quick troubleshooting question, if you don't mind.
Okay.
You want me to share my screen? Very quick.
Sure.